Welcome, my little fairies. Gather close around the fire of tales. Sit in utter silence. For every word I speak carries the shadow of an ancient secret and the echo of a time you have never known. I am an old man, worn by the years, yet my stories have never grown old. They breathe mystery and footsteps that wander through corridors no one dares to cross. Are you ready to hear what no one else has dared to listen to? It was the summer of 1997 when Claire Williams arrived in a remote town in Maine, burdened with two worn suitcases, an aging laptop, and a stack of crumbling manuscripts. At 26, she was immersed in the solitary pursuit of finishing her thesis on the forgotten lineages of North America. What she longed for was silence, isolation, and a dwelling cheap enough to harbor her for a few months. What she found instead was Blackwood House, a structure that seemed less like a home and more like a remnant of something half remembered and half feared. The townsfolk had tried in their own hesitant ways to dissuade her. The old grocer, with eyes clouded by years of unspoken memories, muttered, "That house has a way of unsettling its tenants." "Best to keep your distance," Claire dismissed his words with the weary smile of a skeptic. "I don't live by superstition," she replied. With that, she signed the lease, as though sealing a pact she could not yet comprehend. At first glance, the house appeared quaint. Aged timbers weathered by decades of storms, windows that caught the dying sun like eyes filled with sorrow, and a porch that sagged under the weight of silence. To Claire, it was the perfect refuge, an island detached from time, untouched by the noise of the world. But on her first night, the air within seemed strangely animate. The walls groaned, not like timber settling, but like lungs filling and emptying. Faint rustles threaded through the corridors, carrying the illusion of unseen movement. By the third night, she awoke with a start to the acrid scent of smoke, thick, clinging, suffocating. She scoured the kitchen, the attic, every darkened corner. There was no fire. The house was still, yet the odor lingered, as though flames had once raged and refused to be forgotten. The days that followed tightened the noose of unease. Whispers seeped through the rooms like draughts of cold air. While brushing her teeth, she caught the indistinct murmur of a man's voice, low and deliberate, just behind her. She froze, staring at her own reflection, yet the mirror gave nothing back but her wide, frightened eyes. Another evening, immersed in her notes, she was seized by the distinct sound of a woman's sobs drifting from the floor above. Her heart pounding, she rushed upstairs, only to confront the hush of closed doors and the watchful silence of the empty hall. Her reason wavered, but she clung to it desperately. Exhaustion, she told herself. Stress, perhaps hallucinations. Yet deep within, she knew she was not delusional. These voices did not rise from her imagination. They belonged to the house. When Daniel, her boyfriend, visited during the third week, she unburdened herself of her fears. He chuckled at first, teasing her skepticism. But that very night, as they lay side by side, he bolted upright, his voice sharp. "Did you hear that?" Footsteps in the corridor, armed with a flashlight. They searched every inch of the hallway, their breaths shallow, their nerves taut as wire. What they found was nothing but shadows, shadows that seemed to watch them in return. The nights grew heavier after Daniel's visit. He had tried to dismiss it in the morning, claiming fatigue had played tricks on his senses, yet Claire noticed how his eyes avoided the hallway, how his steps faltered whenever the house creaked. She didn't press him. The silence between them was enough to betray his unease. Alone again, Claire buried herself in research. She scoured town records, the dusty archives in the library, and even old newspaper clippings. Blackwood House had belonged to the Blackwood family, whose name lingered like a half-erased stain in the town's history. In the late 1800s, the patriarch, Jonathan Blackwood, was a ship captain who vanished at sea under mysterious circumstances. His wife, Eleanor, was said to have slowly lost her grip on reality after his disappearance. 3 of their children died before adulthood, and the surviving son, Thomas, was rumored to have practiced strange rituals within the house. Desperate to keep the family line alive, the records grew murky after that. There were whispers of accidents, unexplained fires, and tenants fleeing in the night. One newspaper article from 1923 chilled her more than any shadow in the house. Widow found wandering the woods, claims her children still live in the house.
Widow found wandering the woods, claims her children still live in the house. The more Claire learned, the more suffocating the air inside the house became. At night, she could feel the weight of unseen eyes pressing against her back. Sometimes the whispers escalated into faint cries, children, perhaps, calling out in pain, or laughter that dissolved into shrieks. One evening, as rain battered the windows and the old timbers moaned like an injured beast, Claire sat at her desk, typing furiously, desperate to drown out the sounds. The lamp flickered, the shadows on the wall stretching unnaturally long, twisting as though alive. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught movement, a silhouette passing behind her chair. Her breath seized. She spun around. Nothing. Only the empty room and the rhythmic pounding of the storm. That night, she dreamed of fire. Flames devoured the Blackwood house, and within the inferno, she saw the pale faces of children pressed against the upstairs windows, their mouths open in silent screams. She awoke drenched in sweat, her throat raw as if she had been screaming too. The following morning she found soot on her pillow. Her resolve began to unravel. Each sound gnawed at her nerves. Each shadow clung too long to the walls. She stopped opening certain doors, too afraid of what she might find or awaken. The house had ceased to be a shelter. It had become a labyrinth of dread, a living entity that fed on her isolation. When she tried to leave, the car wouldn't start. She called a mechanic, but the line crackled with static, then went dead. Even her laptop froze, screens filled with fragmented words she had not typed. Stay. Don't go. With us. By the 5th week, Claire no longer trusted her own reflection. In the mirror, her eyes seemed sunken, her movements delayed, as though someone else looked back at her with hunger. Still, she lingered, perhaps out of pride, perhaps because some unnameable force had wrapped itself